Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Seth's got a new background.
Happy Tuesday, gentlemen.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
I think the background looks good. Just need to throw some, just get a little colored light to splash in the background there. It would be just fine.
Yeah.
I think so. I like it.
This is the
other
my house
side.
is
So it
there,
really
clean,
looks like.
clean.
The other side of that basement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, how's everyone doing? Any kind of good news? Any updates from the Power BI service that are coming around that you're aware of?
I know, Mike, you saw something. I actually saw something from Melissa Coates, but I think you saw it first, or you the one who told me about it.
Yeah, there was something that came out from Melissa Coates. There is, I think it's actually an announcement that was made on May 5th by Dustin, I think it was. It says, coming soon, changes to Power BI service, simpler navigation, improvements to lists on home and style updates. I think that's what she's referring to. There's this idea of testing out different graphical styles. So having buttons of an actual button, like a rounded edge button. She has a little tweet that she put out about it. I thought this was a very interesting update, just because you could have multiple users using Power BI, and if you do documentation, that's what I was initially thinking about. But it could confuse users if there's different kinds of buttons for when you click on certain things, right? You have a list of items, and you're gonna click through those items in a list, and those buttons are different potentially based on Microsoft is going to randomly test out some stuff. To me, this feels like a play right out of Facebook. What Facebook does, they have, I don't know, if you read about what Facebook does and how they develop things in production, they'll have 10, 20, 30, 50 different changes to the UI all at the same time happening. And every single application gets these, not every single person, but they run a test all the time. There's a lot of A/B testing. So they'll run a test on 10% of their web traffic and see if people do what they want you to do. It's basically social engineering us to some degree, right? Does
some degree, it's a massive degree.
Does the output of behavior match the expectation of the change of the feature, right? So some metering and measuring. Do people click this more or not click it more? I think that's what Microsoft's doing now a little bit.
Everyone does it, yeah.
And A/B testing in YouTube Shorts. Does he like this video or this video?
Exactly right.
This
Yeah.
video or this video.
I'm trying to dictate Amazon social engineering me. I'm trying to engineer it because I'm trying to find books related to certain topics, and so I keep clicking on the same books I've already bought to say these are the ones I want to see. So yeah, it's like I'm teaching the dog, or the dog's teaching me, but I'm trying to go back. But I mean, but Power BI has kind of been known to do this. At least they're giving the notification now.
Yeah.
Before, when they made like the major service changes, when they went from no filter pane to now there's a filter pane, or from the service outlook to the new one, they kind of just did it. And from an admin point of view, it was very frustrating because there was nothing you could do. There's no preparing. You couldn't turn it off.
Correct.
It just you could turn it off after the fact, but there wasn't any prep, which is very frustrating when everyone goes, "Where's my reports?"
Yeah, exactly
Like,
right.
I don't know what happened either. So, but I mean, minimal testing, that's fine. I think they should give us as the admin the statistics too, to see what people liked or what those changes are.
There was believe it or not, you mentioned that there's actually another blog that came out talking around embedding and how you can use embedding to get all the clicks and interactions of the report out of the report, but it spoke only to embedding only, which, I mean, I do a lot of embedding. I knew you could do this, but never really heard anyone touting the idea of like getting all of your clicks out of the report. Every bar chart you clicked on, every slicer selection, you could extract all that stuff out if you use embedding, because there's actually specific code to do that. I actually had a project the last week where we needed to do something like that. We needed to listen to all the events coming off of the report and adjust things on the report using the eventing of the report itself, which is kind of a cool solution, kind of a neat idea. Anyways, some pretty interesting stuff there. So the embedded space is quite powerful. You can do a lot of things with it, and they've added another round of new APIs that you can use from Power BI embedding. They just updated that site, I think, about a week or so ago. The playground.powerbi.com, where you can embed your own report, and then you can adjust JavaScript properties about the report to do different things, which is really, really cool. Very helpful for demoing what capabilities are there for Power BI. Anyways, any other topic openers? there's a new gateway something coming out, new data source and gateway management experience. That looked pretty nice.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of service changes or again. So yeah, it's better. They're if you use like the Power Platform Admin Center, they've like really enhanced basically your way you manage everything, and it looks
Yep.
almost exactly like that now.
I feel
So
like I don't really like the existing managed gateways experience. There's some weird UI things that, like, if you say check all connections, it it doesn't look like it does anything.
yeah, you don't
And you're
know. You're
like,
just kind of
did it check it or not? Like, what is it doing? So I'm hoping they're fixing like little buggy things like that. Like, I think it does check all the
like give me a
connections.
check mark. Yeah,
Yeah, like show me if I say check all connections to make sure the connections are good. Give me like a
nothing
checkbox
happens.
next to each one check mark at instantly. Or
Right.
I was trying to switch between two different connections on the same gateway,
Hmm.
and when I was switching between users and the admin or the users that could use the gateway, and then the settings of the gateway, for some reason it wasn't like changing in a weird
Oh,
way.
there's a delay.
There's like a
There's
really
always
weird,
a delay.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I'm changing this connection string, and I'm like, why is it not adjusting? It's weird. It's
yeah.
not switching as it should be switching, and so it's just very odd to me. Anyways,
I've entered like half my password and username in different ones because I'll like add it and then I'll go to
mm,
like a new source and you're like, okay, and it changes. You're like, I'm literally typing.
yeah,
So yeah,
it messes me up a little bit.
yeah. Hopefully they do the same thing with the tenant, whether it's not
Oh,
just a long page where they're I don't like tabs or something.
yeah. You
So
mean the tenant admin settings?
yeah, the tenant admins or the tenant settings. So
Man, I remember when there was like one page of settings.
yeah, or what one? Yeah, you didn't have to scroll.
There is now I don't even I can't even scroll anymore. Now I have to like Google the different
My gosh, I'm setting an RSS feed to it.
yeah. Yeah, and I'll literally I'll go to this at the admin page and I'll start control F to find, and I'll just try and find the keywords that I'm looking for, because there's so many settings in the admin page now. Maps are turned off by default now in organizations. You have to turn those on for various mapping activities and just all kinds of weird stuff in there that you have to kind of adjust now. Yeah, I have a short list of things I like to adjust whenever I create a new Power BI tenant, and my short list has now turned into a long list.
It's turned to lunch. Yeah.
There is no the short list, and then you start classifying the short lists. Well, this is the short list. This
Yeah.
is the one I really have to do. This
Yeah,
is
this
the
is
barn burner.
the most essentials.
You guys see this new Power BI known issues page?
No, I saw that come up
Yeah.
too. What do you think about that one?
Awesome. I love it. Like the fact that they're letting you like see a lot of the maybe not like barn burner issues, right? That you
Mm.
would see on support.powerbi.com where like everybody has it. But if you're experiencing odd behavior, the more information you know, the better.
That's
Right?
true. I
Because
would agree with
if
that.
you're getting
Well,
belly,
yeah.
like then it just saves you the click of or the process of creating a support ticket and having have to go through like, oh yeah, we know. Right.
Well,
The only problem I have with it is like support.powerbi.com is really easy to type, and Power
Yeah.
BI troubleshoot known issues. Power BI known
Bookmark it.
issues is kind of
Create a
long
folder and
URL.
bookmark it. So
It's like you guys tried so hard but didn't quite make it.
I just don't want to put the effort in that.
There's an issue getting to the known issues. That's what I should need to list there.
No, I love this because from
What's
when
the difference between an issue and support?
Yeah, exactly right.
yeah, these are issues. If it's support, completely different.
These are good. These are some recognized things here that I think are really, really relevant. I like these, and I think it's also good to communicate that you're working on it, right? So the fact that its status is open, I think somewhat indicates to us that they're acknowledging that it's a problem. They have issue 152 published content, uploading paginated report with the same name fails, has been fixed on April 5th. So it's nice that they're even they're like letting you know when stuff's resolved.
There is a paginated embedded issue that we're experiencing lately where
Ooh, okay.
they already have a fix. I'm actually looking for it in here.
Yeah. I don't think they have.
It's not in here. So report builder, if you're using a parameter,
Okay.
and in a drop down,
Yep.
you can scroll down and select an option.
Yes.
And that will filter the report. But if you use the search bar, it shows that it's filtering down the selection, and you can choose it and you can generate the report, but it won't apply the filter.
Oh, interesting. That's a weird bug.
So yeah, it's a fun one. So
'Cause people are like,
that one
"Wait,
is
so you have to
apparently known, and there's a fix coming out mid-month or something like that. But
Okay.
we've got bit by that
Yeah.
one.
but
So, you,
clicking on
right now
patent.
for the short term, you just have to not use search for a little bit here until they
Well, you have to scroll,
like to scroll until
right?
you get to the answer. Yeah, yeah.
which is a great
Good
great
user experience.
explanation for
Yeah.
a customer.
So
Like,
I
sorry,
guys,
you have to scroll.
I should have mentioned this. The first thing I finally decided I need to dive into paginated reports because we're just getting some requests in that it just made
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
And I just built my first two.
Yeah.
One is using calculation groups to actually pull in the row by row, which
Okay.
is
Say what?
incredible.
Wow.
So, and I mean, it just works. It works perfectly.
I like calculation groups.
I love paginated reports. I'm a complete believer now. Well, because
Uh-oh.
I was so
Pin the
dang
time, pin the
frustrated trying to
time.
create a stupid filter,
Yeah.
because I needed a filter on the date, like choose the month, and every time, oh, the report's wrong, no error code or what was wrong. So after probably 75 tabs open on my browser, I'm like, it clicked.
Mhm.
It finally clicked.
Well,
So
Just wait, man.
do you feel like these well, the paginate? So we've said before in the past, right? If you need access to data, you can start with paginated reports, right? That's the difference between needing insightful data and enriched data, right? Are you feeling that this paginated report space is allowing access? Like it's the you asked like so how do I say this? In our previous conversations, we've talked a lot about like do you need access to data or do you need a report that's going to be actionable to do something? If you're doing an actionable to do something report, that's a report. That's a Power BI report. You want to see some stuff on a page, you want to click on stuff and see data and a visual that you can walk away from and take action on. But I feel like there's this really strong need around you just want access to the data. So what need is
see,
these refilling?
I I I don't know if it's like the data dump because maybe it just looks too nice because it's really showing you almost
Okay.
like, again, like that PDF side. It doesn't really look like you can export into like CSV, or
Okay.
maybe I just need to design it that way. But in terms of like the two solutions we were working on, I was just like, oh my gosh.
So how
So,
so how are
but
your how are your users intending to use it?
so one's almost like a product catalog where they
Okay.
need to show a sheet to customers of all the
Ah,
pricing.
okay.
So
That makes sense.
yeah, but again, like they don't want that in a CV. Yeah,
It's
they
like a
want it to look nice for them.
it's
Needs
like
to
a
be
one pager. Yeah.
Yeah.
export
Others
from a
in
PDF.
invoice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes
the others
sense.
in
PDF, man.
invoice solution. So
Oh, an
like,
invoice. Okay, so
yeah,
yes,
Yes.
and
send out a
it
bunch of
works.
invoices.
Yeah. So
There you go, Matt. Mike. There you go.
I know.
You can automate all your invoicing through Report Builder.
I'm getting close. I've got all the data loaded.
Data-driven subscription.
Exactly
Oh
right.
no, sorry. Now you have to go through Power Apps or Power Data
Yeah.
Flow.
Yes, exactly.
You have to go build a custom solution to generate reports.
maybe we'll get
But
that one A/B
that's
test
cool.
where you don't have to. Yeah.
Very
If you
neat.
No.
if you if you have SQL servers, man, they're so nice. Just create a store procedure view, just plug it in. Like that is so fast for
Yeah.
data access.
Well, the
Report
fact
builder.
that the user chooses like one of the things is like the one of the drop down dictates what in a sense what the measure is going to calculate because it's a calculation group.
Mhm.
So they have to choose that beforehand. And I couldn't believe just how well that worked.
Ooh, I see what
Yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah.
So you're using the calculation group as a drop down item, and
Right.
then the report calculates everything based on that filter criteria.
Right.
Are you
Yeah.
using
Like
the
that.
report builder visual or
No. The report
okay, full
builder.
blown?
All
Okay.
that, all
And plugged
the
into a tabular model.
RDL.
yeah, plugged
Yeah,
into a Power BI
nice.
model. Yeah. Insane.
Nice.
Yeah, I like it. And this is not the one in the service. This is the downloadable one from
This is
desktop.
downloadable.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm making
It's
sure
fancy. It looks nice too from the consumer point of view.
I'm making sure Tommy uses the
Mhm.
real
Pixel
desktop.
perfect, man. Pixel
Yeah.
perfect.
Pixel perfect.
Wonderful.
It is. There's so many properties in that though.
They could update the
You can
design. They
spend
could,
a day. You can spend a day, just a full
Gosh.
day,
Yeah.
messing around with stuff.
So I think this is a good point to transition to. Now that we're talking about creating a bunch of reports, particularly paginated reports. Now,
Because we love creating reports.
now, how do we kill them? So the topic today is how to retire a report, and how do you know when a report is supposed to be, when is a good time to retire a report? So yeah, let's kick this one off. Tommy, what would be some good scenarios for when you would kind of classify a report ready for retirement?
Well, I might have said a little nicer than killing a report, but at the same time, I love that we're having this conversation because we love creating reports. We love talking about the new things we can do with it, but we
Agreed.
never talk about the reason why we have to retire it. It's maybe the hardest thing we have to do, but I think the conversation today starts with why are there so many dependencies? Why is this so hard? And the other part is there's such a need to do this that I think is one of the more goes under the radar. But it's so important that the content that we have in the service and that organizations are looking at is only relevant. And a lot of times, if you have 500 employees and 250 reports, I can guarantee you that's too many. But I think a lot of us have this situation. So there's a need here.
But there's a natural way that Microsoft kind of disables reports by default, right? So if a report is not reviewed or touched or opened in a certain amount of time, if there's a scheduled refresh on those reports, they just stop getting refreshed. So one thing I guess you could go through your data. I mean, this is something that I find that I use when I'm looking at reports, or even when I'm going into a customer's environment and saying, do you really need all these reports? Let's clean these things up a bit. And I think there are places where I am more restrictive around keeping clean reports in an environment versus not in an environment. Like, for example, if I'm using deployment pipelines to move reports from dev to test to prod, test and prod should have only reports that are being regularly refreshed and regularly looked at. Maybe you're having a couple reports in dev that may or may not live on, but even then I would argue, and it's very easy for me to see in the compare mode between dev and test which reports are not there and which reports are stale, meaning I updated or changed them in the dev space. So for me, I feel like there are certain parts of Power BI where I'm a little bit more lenient around having older reports around. Now, that being said, I do a lot of my work now with deployment pipelines, almost exclusively. Like if we're putting stuff into production, like I'm using pipelines as much as I possibly can. There's this other world where you don't have a deployment pipeline on, right? So there's other parts of the world that, the business user or a business team has reports and they're publishing them. Me personally, I don't work very hard to regulate another team or other team stuff in those workspaces. I just assume that they'll just figure it out, and if stuff starts turning off, I don't. I just let it go. But
Are
Tommy,
you
you're
are you cleaning?
oh, go ahead.
Are you cleaning because you're a neat freak with Power BI, or are you doing it for other reasons?
No, I think it's you look at one, I need to do a better job at it. And I think that's why I'm also happy we're having the conversation. But the biggest thing is if I'm a user and I see an access to an app and there's 7 report, like let's say 12 reports in a given app, or that I'm just looking shared with me, and one of them that I go to, or maybe more, are just not super relevant anymore. Um, Again, like there's other reports that serve the same purpose, and I think a lot of times we think I should only retire a report either if the data is wrong or it's something that we don't even look at anymore. But a lot of times we just keep refreshing reports that are still showing relevant information where there's a lot of other reports that serve a better purpose. Show the data are the ones that are kind of the ones that you're focusing on. So now a user has a view into basically the same thing, which can lead to ambiguity, especially if that's not something you're focusing on. So to me, that's where the kind of the issue is it's not we're killing a report because it's wrong or the campaign's over. It's going through and going, is this super relevant still? Because we already have a report that does that. And it's kind of understanding just the ones that are either not being looked at, or two, you kind of have a better solution out there already. I don't know that.
You have a better solution out there already. That's an interesting one. I guess what I'm driving at is, um, are we driving into retiring a report because there are too many? Because it's too like and they're not providing enough value? Is it resource usage and consumption? Is it because people are chewing up your capacity? Like what are the
Yeah.
drivers for you guys to
Okay.
say
I see.
I'm gonna go along and salvage a bunch of reports?
Well,
So
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
So say
Okay.
you go first, Tommy.
So there's 3 components to that. So we use PowerShell and we basically get the audit log. So we're always looking at a main report that looks at the number of views for a given 30-day rolling days, and then the like percentage of how many users, because if one person's looking at it, maybe we point them somewhere else. We look at days since view, so reports that haven't been viewed in 25 days, or it's just very sparing, those kind of get flagged. And then we look at even like the refresh history is like, man, this gets refreshed a lot. Maybe there's not necessarily a need for that. So that's the number one thing, is the usage side of things. The other side is kind of going through the app and trying to assess. And one thing, we had the conversation a few podcasts ago about categorizing the reports, not necessarily marketing or sales, but from an intention base, where it's okay, this is another general report. We're building all these other reports that there's a lot of overlap here. And this one's not getting a lot of views. So maybe this is a candidate. But typically it starts with usage. And I'm somewhat not going away from that, but considering just because someone's looking at like maybe 3 or 4 people are looking at it doesn't mean that it should still be out there. Maybe there's a better place to point them. But we look at that trending down and that rolling days to kind of understand what's really being looked at. So that's the number one place we start.
Usage.
I mean, I think Tommy, your world is very much centered around like your team is the one that primarily produces all the reporting, and so
Right.
I think where I'm focusing my time right now is developing the process of what you can do to keep reports live versus not live. What does that review look like? Quarterly, weekly, monthly? Is there something there that's kind of walking through that process? Because I'm thinking about I'm working with companies that are starting their center of excellence. They're just beginning to kind of get down that journey. So there's like a couple people who are doing some very important work around a couple key reports for various teams. And so that team is kind of like the center of excellence. It's centralized to some degree, but they do allow the ability for other teams to build their own stuff, right? So everyone in the company has an E5, therefore everyone has Power BI. So there's also things in the departments that are being spun up that are not controlled by the BI team. And so I think it's important to define a best practice, how to deprecate old reports, how to clean things up. And where I've been kind of drawing the line has been around the deployment pipeline area, right? If you need to get something if you have a clear audience that needs to review a report before you publish it, either use dev test prod or just dev prod, whatever that may be. I try and keep those areas a bit cleaner, just because that's more of what I would call a governed space. You can lock those down a bit more. And then when you're talking about things that are just coming from the department, right? We have a marketing department, a HR department, right? They can build their own reports, and it's kind of, here's some general guidelines of what we would want to do to help you manage these reports, and let them kind of own their own space there to a degree. Because I don't own all the reports. Like I have
True.
to like this is like the pyramid thing that Matthew Roach talks about, right? There's a couple key reports at the top of the pyramid. There's going to be, as Power BI becomes more of a commodity, as Power BI becomes more common across the organization, and I think this is the direction Microsoft is going. Microsoft wants Power BI to be used as much as every Excel document or every Word document, or like it needs to be part of that platform, and you're seeing them move towards that direction. And so I think as you see more and more consumption of this, we're going to have a higher tolerance for, there's just stuff that's just going to live in the environment that just lives there. And I think it's going to be more exercise, more rigor around what is certified and promoted.
Yeah, but Word doesn't have an entire series related about governance and administration either. There's a difference between someone creating reports that are irrelevant, outdated, or just wrong.
I would argue the same issue is going to be with Excel, right? How do you govern an Excel sheet that's being emailed around the company? Like, it literally it's who it comes from, right? If it came from, the guy who's doing the analyst stuff on the Excel sheet, like that's your authority, right? So we have a new realm here. We have a place where Power BI can have that kind of higher level embedded security around the report and the data models. But on the other hand, too, the more this becomes used, the more you're going to have junky reports or things that just are not as impactful, that are still going to be useful to someone. But I think your audience of that report usefulness starts decreasing in size.
So what's that parameter? Because I think, and I want to ask, set that too. Like, just because 3 people look at it on a month, does that qualify as something that okay, we should keep it? But I because it shouldn't just be zero usage. That's an easy one to deprecate. But I think there's more of a story on qualifying a candidate too. And to Mike, I think with the data point of view in terms of for an organization, if you're dealing with a marketing team who's gone rogue, right? Like, yeah, you don't control them, but at the same time, if they're reporting things that are centralized or like coming from a database, at least, like if it's Google Analytics, okay, but if it's utilizing some of your corporate numbers, yeah, you should be looking at that, especially if it's right or if they're building wrong things. There should absolutely be the administration around that.
But you've immediately gone from you've immediately gone from the user, the end user standpoint, and you just gave a scenario of the top of the apex, right?
Yeah,
Anything that's you're talking, you just went from you can do your own reports in your department to now we're looking at corporate metrics. That's in my mind, those are two different things.
yeah,
They're
no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so like, they can report whatever they want to report on in their department, right? You know, if Michael needs to build a report on top of corporate metrics and mash it up with some Google Analytics or some Excel sheets or other data sets that I have locally in my department that makes sense for me, fine. I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, that department is responsible to the organization for getting their job done. If they need that report to get their job done, okay. Now, I think where things get a little more tricky here is when that department starts communicating to leadership or broader part of the organization around their performance. That's when I think you're starting to look at more detail, like, okay, where did this data come from? Is this a governed source or not? Making sure that there is standards around how that report and information is being conveyed. Because again, to your point, there are these governed larger data set things that need to be regulated at the governed at the company level, because you just don't want people saying whatever, oh yeah, we're up, you know, we met all of our goals. Well, what were your goals? We don't know. Or, you know, you've moved a bunch of data around so that you can make data say whatever you want it to say. So you need someone to kind of take another look at this.
I've heard some things, and this could just be because I'm exhausted and tired, but I'm not hearing why. Why are we deprecating? Like Tommy, you said usage is something that you look at, and if usage drops to a certain level, you look at deprecating the report because nobody's using it.
Good question.
We've talked about building a pipeline and a process, but like, why are we going? Because there's effort, which you're outlining, right? Like somebody developed PowerShell scripts to determine usage, but I
Correct.
think that's more in terms of what is valuable. And I guess you're flipping it on its head and also using, it for what's not valuable anymore. But why are we going through the efforts of deprecating?
So I think for one reason that I like deprecating is just too much to manage. If you have a workspace or even a deployment pipeline, people get confused. What's in there? Like, just you look at if you go to like the lineage view, there's too many items and to know what's actually going on, what is really being used and what is not. So I think there's definitely a need to clean up stuff and get rid of it.
So I agree with that one. That's one I wrote down.
So
right?
there's like
it's
a management
confusing
issue
for an end user or managing, right?
Correct.
So yeah,
But what is the difference between a clear-cut scenario where auto refresh has been off on this report for a month, shut it down, like just
I totally agree with
delete it, right? Versus it's still on because one user uses it. Is it worth going through the efforts of deprecation because you still obviously have a user that's using the report?
Well, I think that goes to my point earlier, and especially even if there's a report that is maybe even used by a few more people, does that data and those numbers exist somewhere else? And something that we are, either focusing on and that has overlap to this either less used report. I'm
Okay.
taking this from the consumer view where I don't want them to go to a report that still works, right? And it still updates because a few people look at it. But it's almost like when an app tells you, no, we need you to update today. Like you can't really use the features until you update your app. In the same way, we might have data that's either relevant but might be missing a few filters, or it's just a harder view for users. I want to give users as targeted as reports as I can where they can look at it, they know the intention. Why have two reports that have the same drop downs and serve the same purpose? And to me, Yeah, you
So
start with the usage. Yeah.
what does deprecation mean then?
Well,
So
wait. Before we go to that next question, I want to answer your question there, Seth, from my perspective. I think the more you put on the BI team. So again, I'll think I think Tommy, your team is centrally locating a lot of the BI into a single team, right? There's this team that can manage stuff. The more you have reports that are just these one-offs or one or two users are consuming them, that is still under the governance and ownership of that BI team. Meaning, if it breaks, Tommy's team's got to fix it. If it's
right.
got wrong data and they have questions about it, Tommy's team's got to service that call. Those priorities, because the report has low usage, would probably fall to the bottom of that list, right?
Right.
If there's two reports where I have conflicts around data's not refreshing or there's issues or we have to update something, every additional reporting thing that comes along for Tommy's team is potentially a distraction away from something that could be really impactful for the company or focusing on other bigger nuggets to move that meets a larger audience.
So
And
I
yeah,
agree with that, but that's
yeah.
why I'm asking, what is deprecation? Is that
So
a full delete?
Well, so here's where, and here I want to add a thought to this one. So, what is deprecation, right? I think potentially there's two definitions of this one. One version of deprecation could be what you say, Seth, just full delete, just get rid of the report, take it out of the service,
No,
done,
I'm asking.
done.
I'm not saying.
Well, I'm just saying that I feel like that is a version of deprecating. I think another version of deprecating, and maybe this is a nuanced thing, is if this is a process that can be followed, there might need to be a change in ownership of who owns that report moving forward. So again, I don't know how well
Yeah.
this would work in the long term, but the idea here is if Tommy's team needs to as I conceptually think about it, there's going to be more and more reports generated. There's going to be more and more data sets being generated to answer more and more questions. As that continues to grow and snowball, these lighter weight reports, smaller audiences, those are the kind of things that you need to shed and give and potentially hand over ownership to the individual users or user that's using that report and let them own it. Like, okay, we don't have time to manage this anymore. We're focusing on these bigger initiatives. There's this deprecation where Tommy's team no longer holds responsibility for this report. We're going to give it to your team, right? You're the only one who uses this report. It's got low usage. Or Tommy says, whenever requests come to this report, it's going to be of low priority because we have other fish to fry.
So though you said two different things, and I'm going to harp on the first one and agree with the second one. The first one is,
Sure.
I don't understand the first comment, because if to all of our reporting, right, if you're going to push something up through the pipeline to the point where it's enterprise ready, right, you're probably pushing it onto a realm of different data sources, different data sets, cleanliness, whatever.
Yep.
Maybe the useful life of that report is downtrending now.
Sure.
You can't just give that to somebody, though.
Right.
Like, you can't have them own it because it got pushed up through the cycle to Tommy's team, and these people don't know how to manage anything that would go wrong or
Right.
triage anything in that cycle. So I don't agree with that. On
And
the
also,
second
yeah.
part, though,
Go ahead.
as it relates to what was your second point? It was the one I was going to agree with.
Taking away from low prioritizing things in a
Yes.
low way.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is what's coming into my thought as we're talking about this.
Okay.
Right. I 100% agree with like dev to prod, right? Like,
Sure.
you want to keep these workspaces and pipelines clean. But I also agree with it's confusing for end users because you hit some threshold where somebody's going to an app or something, or an area of shared reports, and scroll, right? Just keep scrolling. There's so much out there. They don't know what is value anymore.
Sure.
So my thought here is, I wonder if deprecation solves two things. If I go, fine, we'll keep this report, but the usage, to Tommy's point, is lower. It's no longer useful for a bunch of people, but it is still useful for this handful. We're going to move it. We're going to move it into a different app, and it's going to be, hey, you guys know which reports you
I'm cool with
use
that.
on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But I get it out of my space that is priority, which is production, or an area with wider usage, right? And that way, maybe that's a way I segment out the prioritization of, if you have a problem, you're already in second tier. Like, you're not a priority.
Yep.
Don't expect these things to be updated a lot, but it's there because you find use in it. I'm not gonna nuke it though.
So that's actually I love that. One of the processes we do for that deprecation, because it's not just a report that made my little usage, it just might also be outdated. There's a lot of scenarios. We'll kick off the process with, depending on the usage, giving a day's notice to all the users who've accessed it in the last 60 days. And we'll kind of gauge if someone's like, you can't do that, like, you can't archive it. So we'll send out an email or whatever the communication is, saying, notice this report is on watch to be archived. That's the friendly word that we use. And saying, like, on this day, if you need the data,
Like that.
we have these other reports, because we kind of say, like, there's that overlap. If you need something in this particular report, let us know. And if we don't hear anything back from people, great. We just wait till that day, and we send a message 2 days before saying, final warning, it's going to be archived. If someone really needs it, though, I like that idea to an extent. I like that idea of, like, a archived workspace or
I think that's
archived
good.
app.
Yep.
But at the same time, though, what's the point of that if you never look at it and then it becomes outdated, because now your other reports with the same logic that you're prioritizing, now this one falls behind, where you had to append, you had to do an extra filter. Well, now it's just wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's if you were to have that workspace, which again, to an extent, I like it, I think you would really have to put on it at your own risk. Like, these are no longer verifiable anymore, because
Okay, so this
So,
this
but
is this is speaking to my point that I made the first time, right? If the data you're looking at is no is if there were let's just imagine two reports. One report gets a lot more love. It's getting all the new features. You're adding new filters and columns or whatever you're doing. Seth's adding all the calculated columns he needs inside that report. It's perfect now. He loves it. That one has moved on, and the old one is now almost inaccurate to a degree. And you're talking to the tune of deprecating it or archiving it.
yeah,
If
so
there's
so
if
that
there's
to
one
me that's
person,
not deprecation though. That's a new version and you don't get a choice. You get version 2 and I shut off version 1.
okay, I think that okay, that's kind of where I was going with this.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think you want to hang on to reports that are doing that kind of stuff. Like
I completely agree.
if you have a report that's so far out of date that it's not current to what you're remodeling the new models or better models, there's one person using it. Sorry, we're deprecating your thing. We can't support everything. You can't make everyone happy, I don't think, all the time. And that's where I was to the tune of, okay, you could potentially, and again, I'm hoping that we're bringing the analytical level of our entire company up, right? If there's these older reports that are out there that we can hand off, I, why not? I mean, yes, there's maybe like a learning lesson around that, right? Hopefully the people that are consuming these reports have some ability there to manage or maintain those things, or there's a department lead in their team that can manage and maintain that moving forward. Maybe you move their responsibility to that department with their hub and spoke approach and talk to their BI lead and their team. All right, here's the reporting that you need. Here's the report that we created. We're not using it anymore. You guys can own this now. So I do feel like there's a conversation there. Maybe not full, to your point, Seth, earlier. We can't expect every single individual to know how to maintain these reports because it's ran up the chain through Tommy's amazing BI maturation development process thing, right? I mean, it got through to corporate reporting, right? So to hand that off might be too much effort for someone to understand how it works.
I guess the thing I'm butting my head up against here, right, is like maybe it's like what are the reports we are deprecating, right? Because if you think about Power BI, everybody has their own workspace. Everybody has their own reports that are useful to them. So it's not like you're saving on I'm brain like I'm torn. I'll have a thought here at some point, but I don't think you have like
There's another
maybe what
side
I'm
of this.
saying is like you can't have a deprecate. Do you have the same deprecation cycle for all areas of the business?
No, because I think there's another side to this too. Okay, so
Do you have the same deprecation cycle for all areas of the business?
Are you
No,
deprecating the same things,
I I
the
don't
same types of reports?
I don't
you
know.
kind
I think it's going to
we
vary.
start the same.
Because the reason I'm asking this question is like in the past, right? I would deprecate like hardcore deprecate a bunch of reporting services reports because I had finite resources.
Totally.
right? So
Yes, you can't
there was a
maintain it all.
capacity,
Yes,
correct.
issue.
There was a cost to maintaining
Yes.
something that wasn't getting a bunch of usage. Now, I can say yes, deprecation makes a lot of sense on a premium capacity,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Mhm.
totally.
Where
Yep.
I have a bunch of users that are or potentially, like not misusing, right? Maybe that's not deprecating the report. It's fine tuning it, but
Sure.
at the same time, like that's a specific use case versus corporate wide. We're just going to have a cycle of deprecation where we remove a bunch of reports for cleanliness.
I think
Yeah.
I mean, I think that for me, the clear line is if the reports has not been refreshed in n number of days, and the scheduled refresh is not running, right? I would say the further away the data is from the actual report time you look at it, right? We're talking like a month, 2 months, 3 months out,
Yeah.
and nothing's been refreshed. Kill it. Done. Easy decision. I think the harder decision, what I'm struggling with right now, and I think what we're talking about more is what happens to those reports where it's 1 or 2 users a week. It's that slow usage of people. Maybe they're not aware of there's a better report out there. Maybe they missed the training to go to the correct report now. Maybe there is a format or a way that they just get used to it. People are just lazy and not lazy in a bad way, but they're just used to what they know, right? If this
So are
report looks
you
a certain way,
keeping
No, but
are you keeping track then of okay,
Tommy's got that
maybe
tracked.
maybe I'm catching up here. Maybe I'm catching up. So if
Drink
you're
another
what
piece of
is your
coffee.
cycle? What is your I don't have coffee. That's probably the
Oh
problem.
no.
The so your cycle is you look at usage of a report, and then what your next step is you determine whether or not you have that data somewhere else,
so
and
we'll
you
flag.
could
Yeah.
move a
So
user over to it.
we
Because
flag
then
those reports, and then if depending on who the owner of that report is, so we'll kind of say, hey, can you look at this report? Is this still relevant? Because we don't know, in a sense, like I didn't create every single report, so we'll ironically export that to Excel right now or
Oh,
create a bookmark.
Tommy.
I know, but we'll just
Tommy,
show like here's the ones
you're
that
killing me.
have low usage. Here's the who the users are, etc. But kind of going, is this still something that you're working on, or these are ones that it's not meeting a threshold, or we know like there's a better report out there that serves a better purpose. Maybe you have like 10 people looking at it, but like once a month, so you have 10 users, 10 views, but you have another report that does that. We kind of give that communication internally, flag those, and then we'll send out that, in a sense, external communication saying there's a 2-week notice. And if people go up in arms, okay, well, there's a conversation. But if no one says anything, we like, again, in our communication, we'll say this is a report that has that data.
Mhm.
If you want a training, we have our office hours. You can learn more about using it here, but it serves that purpose. If we don't hear anything, then it goes into, in a sense, our archive. If we do, we'll have that conversation on what that problem is no, it gives me this table. Okay, we can, work with them to integrate that, because we talked about that overlap. But I think those are the easy situations where it's that low usage. So it's kind of flagged where it's like you've met the end of, you know, you're it's easy because this doesn't have the eyeballs. But there's another side to this to me. And it's not just reports that are old in a sense. I think you might have a lot of high frequency reports that are in need of not just the retirement, but a redesign or like just a major overhaul. Because when you built it, you're doing things a lot different now where it either become,
And the tools change too.
yeah, and the tools
so
changed. So
I would agree with that though. Like is part of your deprecation cycle uh like decreasing the amount of refreshes that you have in a day, right? Because that is
mhm,
resource consumption. You are
yeah,
putting a strain on something, especially if you're hammering, a back end system every 30 minutes or every hour or whatever the case
Oh,
may be.
totally.
yeah,
Maybe the usefulness of that report is it doesn't need to have that frequency, right? And that would be a way I could see in terms of updating reporting to, on that cycle, right?
I,
Because we're
I,
talking about how like having a deprecation
yeah,
cycle, right?
Mhm.
What does that look like? You have a usage reporting, which drives, some of the conversations around okay, refresh. How often is it refreshing? Is it something that we move into a different workspace potentially because we want a clean, if this is a app that's shared to the wider organization, right? Maybe you only want 15, 20 reports in there.
Mm-hmm.
So
those steps make sense to me.
The ironic thing, to your point, maybe you just decrease the refresh cycle. That's something we've literally tried, and then you get 3 messages. Be that one person who looks at it once a month is like, "This is not refreshed. Can you update the report now?" And they're like, "What?" So it's just the ironic thing that that's just what happens because everyone always expects it up to date. I think if you have a report that like maybe we just refresh it once a week because there's no usage, I think you kind of already answered your question on does this need deprecation.
Mm-hmm.
So
You know what I would like? And I don't know this. This is just a random thought around refresh cycles. Is there an API hook to see when scheduled refresh is happening on reports? There is, isn't there?
So if there's an API to see when the scheduled refreshes are, and if you want to have some fun,
But is it one API for all scheduled refreshes, or is it you iterate through each workspace to do it?
You got to iterate, but
through each workspace.
Through each workspace. But if you want to have some fun,
if I have a report of report refreshes, then end users can't complain.
Exactly.
Here's your refresh cadence.
Mm-hmm.
This is when you can expect things to be refreshed.
I built actually I didn't build it. I was working with Alex Dupler to build out a visual. Excuse me, I had to sneeze. I had to build a visual that was kind of indicating that exact thing, right? How many hours has this report gone without a refresh? And it had this kind of like this burn down timer where it was, if it was within 8 hours or 24 hours, the data's fresh. If it was in 24 to 32 hours, it was starting to get stale. Don't worry, refresh is coming. And then it was like something longer than that. Like if it was 60 hours and older, there's a problem. It's red. We're looking into it, right? Some kind of thing. So they were notifying themselves when critical data was missing. And well, I mean, Alex he works at Microsoft, right? There's hundreds of massive reports and data sets they're trying to refresh all the time. So this totally makes sense. Why you'd have like an indicator of how stale the data is potentially.
Can you imagine how many people are trying to hit all the same systems?
I'm sure they have a good infrastructure.
The scale, right, blows my mind.
Oh, I would totally agree. I mean, think about the scales the clients that they deal with, the things that they're working on. I mean, goodness gracious, everything's like I would imagine everything's like on like a P11 or whatever. There's probably like a SKUs they have that we don't even know about that are out there that's crazy big because they need it, right? The models are probably massive.
I'm sure Azure makes a fortune on them.
That's true because they're cross billing themselves, right, or something like that, right?
Internal costing structures, funny money.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everyone's on premium.
To the refresh thing, you want to have some fun or blow your mind. Our usage report, we combine the 2 scripts is the days since view and the views, and then the actual like previous refreshes that looks at the number of refreshes, the average refresh time, and the refresh rate. So we'll again look at those based on the usage, and sometimes we'll even sort it based on how many refreshes. And then you'll see these reports like 15 views, 17-minute refresh time average, and there's like 20 or like 40 in a week. You're like, whoa. So yeah, I think there's that need, but it's all about, I think the 2 things that we've talked about, this underlying current, at least from the base, just the basic you should do is, are you organizing your tenant from the internal side, making sure that you're not too much capacity where you don't have all this either pressure on your gateway, pressure on your capacity, ensuring that what we're working on, like we don't have to work on 100 reports and update those. But and the other side too, from that BI side, is making sure that the users have the relevant things to look at. And then the other base thing we do is just usage. Is our things just have lost their sparkle, and or there's just not a lot of usage. I mean, I think that's just the basic.
You want to throw out the old, huh, for the new all the time.
Well, I think if I look at this, what is the hardest thing of this to do, right? I think the challenge here is being able to know how to. So a comprehensive report that pulls in all usage metrics the way you need to see them to be able to make these decisions or these calls, right? We're talking about like refresh cycles, which reports are refreshing, which ones have not been refreshed in a long time. We're talking about number of users, distinct counts of users by report, how often, is it every week? Like there are other metrics here. There are good metrics. I think these are all good, but I think it's not easy to get to these numbers. You've had to put some work in to make reports to get to those numbers, right? Across your everything you build.
Honestly, though, with the activity log, and it just having a
Is that what you're hanging most of your time on? You're hanging almost all of your metrics off of the activity log.
well, I mean, all these metrics come from the activity log,
But
and then it's just one report.
there's other places you can get it too, right? You can say view report usage statistics.
Yeah, but you have to do that workspace by workspace, though,
Correct.
which makes it very frustrating. The activity log pulls in everything, but then again, it makes it a lot easier because then I can create my own metrics.
But this is my point, though. You have found the activity log answers a lot of these questions and can roll up these metrics that way you have.
Yeah.
There is no automatic report for the activity log. I don't see anything out there in the community that has done that. Right? I mean, you did the Power Automate and loading data from the activity log into
the scanner API.
The scanner API.
Different. Yeah.
So, I mean, is the scanner API the same thing as what you're talking about, or it's different?
So if I spent more time, I could probably create like a automated PowerShell script that runs once a day. Right now, I still have to run the PowerShell script once a week, and then the report refreshes.
Okay, so this is my hang up, right? The hang up here.
But you could create it. Someone smarter than me can easily take a PowerShell script and run it once a day.
Oh, there's a lot of people smarter than me. I'm just saying, like you've automatically narrowed like new people to Power BI. This is something that should be. Here's my argument. My argument to this is saying this should be basic stuff. Honestly, you should be able to like say turn on activity log, capture these metrics, and stuff should just start spitting out somewhere in an automated way that you don't have to deal with a whole bunch of like I don't want to write PowerShell scripts to get this stuff.
There's only one person who needs to do that, and the BI team sees this report, so that no one else. It's not like every user has to create that report.
Agreed.
Create that. Just set up take a few hours to. Like the script, just plug and play your numbers. Like May 1st to May 5th, run it, refresh, you're done. And then all your BI team can see it, and they can see the same metrics. So it makes, I don't think
this needs to be easier regardless. I mean, I like the metrics we're talking about. I'm just saying you're saying it is easy because you've spent time to learn how to do it. I'm just saying there's a lot of people I think that don't understand what you've done or have like, no, there was even an activity log laying around somewhere. So I think
I see what you're saying.
What I guess I'm trying to say is for people who are coming into Power BI and knowing how to manage things, this should be something that should be more. Microsoft should expose this in an easier way. Is what I'm trying to say. There should be an easier way of understanding all the information.
There is something on the roadmap to that, and it's been on the roadmap for like a year and a half.
Oh, good. That means it'll get done then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's this other side that I again. That's really pressing on me on retiring report, where it's not the usage it's too easy to use that as our number one way to retire report, right? But I think there's other cases where it's again a little more ambiguous, where when you do have two reports that overlap too much, and to me I think that is a story, or should start a story for some sort of retirement merge, what have you.
Yep.
Even if you're merging two reports, in a sense, you're retiring it because you may have completely different audience.
You take the information out of one, bring it to the other one, and now you can only maintain. I think as a BI team, you should be looking at stuff like that. You should be always looking for how can you consolidate reports together to meet the same objective with multiple reports. I totally agree, because then it's less effort for you to manage it. It's one report now for everything.
But it's harder to do because one, you're gonna have more users on this.
True.
So if you're going to migrate one user set onto a new report, why don't you just enhance the original?
Well, I'm saying you're merging two. Because again, why work on two exact same?
Why build two?
You know how this happens.
You're literally saying
no. I'm not saying build them twice at the same time. I'm saying this over years and years of building reports. I'm not like, hey, you want a marketing report and you also want it. Why don't I just do both and figure out what the hell happened? Yeah, if I get the same request, I'm going to make one report.
I'd like to.
I'm gonna argumentative mood this morning.
Oh my goodness. I agree with you, Tommy. I don't think I don't think people are actively going out and looking for how many times can they build the same report multiple
Yeah,
times.
but
However, I think you are right in the fact that a report that was made a long time ago was meeting a very specific list of questions that have potentially changed, or you've had a different request that was entirely different, and the topic of information is close enough that you could say, okay, these answers we're trying to resolve are two different things. Realistically, the topic is the same stuff and the data set is fairly similar. How could I
exactly.
take those two things and then merge them? And I agree, that's a lot more work because now you're having to take report requirements from two different reports and get people to potentially align or merge their requests together.
But this is way more impactful, I think, to the business, and I think a better use case. Again,
I
if
agree.
nothing's getting views, in a sense, it's just more. It's a low impact. But what we're talking about, I think, is more. I don't want to say more important, but I think it's more critical because this is what everyone's looking at, and if you have that overlapping data, this is whatever that is again kind of reporting the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily. Well, if you says why should I go to this report or why should I go to that report? Can you answer that? And if you can't, there's that story. But then now you have a lot more dependencies. Now you have this what affects a lot more people.
But yeah, but I also would argue you're not changing the effect of the report, right? So if you have a report that's being used by 15 people daily and you found another report that's being used by one person, the impact of that one
That's
person is
sure.
minimal because you're bringing in that one more person into that 15 or 16
No,
audience
that's
group.
easy. Yeah,
So
I'm
like
saying that's the easy part.
to me, like yeah, if there's two reports where both of them are using 15 users and you're trying to merge all that together, yeah, maybe more tricky. But again, as I'm thinking about low usage reports, I think you know, as we kind of wrap here because we're getting close to time,
Yeah.
I think my lessons learned from this conversation has really been around what do you identify as a low usage report, right? So what are key indicators of things I want to stop supporting as the central BI team or deprecating those items? I definitely agree it's hard to do that stuff, but I think I'm looking at, has it been refreshed frequently enough? Or is the refresh turned off, auto refresh off, right? The data's stale, the report's not useful. The other half of it would be looking at the number of users using the report. And then I think from there, I would look at, are there any equivalent reports, right? Trying to evaluate how many reports do we have that are saying the same stuff and can we merge them down to one? I think is another good takeaway that I'm going to take for this one. Oh, these are good topics. I'm just annoyed at the activity log. I'm annoyed that it's so hard to get to the data, and I just can't say send all activities to blob storage and let me play with the report there. Like that's maybe you can. I don't know. I got to look into it more. I literally do not know enough about
It's
the
an
activity log
API. Yeah.
to make it just dump data into a blob storage that I can go play with it later. Because I think that for me would be a big win because I could set up more of an automated cycle around just getting the information out in a regular pattern. Anyways, enough of me talking. Seth, what are some of your wrap up thoughts, your key thoughts here?
I think it's predicated on usage to get an idea of how to prioritize the value of reports, which you can also use within the organization. Like we were saying, like how you um, what you put in front of other requests for
Sure.
fixing,
Yeah,
right? So
totally.
there's a daily to that. Delaying refresh, I think, is a good one, right? The more
Yep.
or the less value a report is providing, maybe ensure that you're not refreshing it all the time. Tommy's throw out the old for the new kind of resonates a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially create a report graveyard in between, right before you do a full delete.
Yeah.
Say say you're
Retired.
we'll give it to you, but we're taking it out of our
Yeah.
mainstream reporting because
Slower
nobody else is
SLA.
using it.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe you can align to a slower SLA there.
Yeah, my last point is I think we're really talking to the importance of the ability for us to catalog what we actually have that identifies the need to retire too. So
Yeah.
if you don't realize you have all this overlap, you're going to keep building very similar reports.
That's true. And if you have a team that's not aware of all the reports you've created, like if one
Right.
guy's creating all the reports, you know exactly what you built to some degree.
Yeah.
Maybe you forget about one or two here or there, but like if you have a
Exactly.
team of 10, the expectation that they're going to know every single report is probably there, but
Right.
they're not. They're not going to be able to know every single report for all reports you're building if you have hundreds of
You're
reports.
fired.
Yeah, you better study all the reports. Like, I think that's an unreasonable expectation. So having good documentation, having central locations of stuff, I think makes sense, because then you can look for similar requests when they come in and figure out where those need to be added, or if it is this an actual new report, or is this just adding
Right.
to an existing report. I like that. Well, everyone, you've done a great job listening to us. Thank you very much, listeners, for being so patient with us while we fumble our way through this topic around deprecating reports. Hopefully, there's a couple nuggets here that you can take away or glean from us, building some of your own processes internally to your organization, or going to figure out how to use the activity log. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a solution at some point. Anyways, our only ask, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you had some fun listening, learning some new things here, is just share this with somebody else. Let a colleague know, let someone know on LinkedIn or Twitter. Tweet out that you found some value from this episode, and we really appreciate the feedback. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
So if you're listening live right now, make sure to subscribe on Apple and Spotify or anywhere you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating. Really helps us out. Really appreciate that. If you are listening, make sure to subscribe live on YouTube and LinkedIn. Follow Power BI Tips. Join the conversation live.
Really appreciate it. Thank you all, and we'll see you next this Thursday.
in a couple days.
In a couple days.
Same schedule.
Oh, goodness. All right. Thank you all. See ya.